and you were there. You were in the building for Fabio Wardley and Joesph Parker, and you were there. And really good fight. Lots of ebbs and flows. I want to have us talk about the adjustments both fighters made in this fight, but we got to start with the topic of the hour, the stoppage itself in the 11th round. Wardley trailing 98-92, 96-94. One judge has it even at 95 apiece. And Wardley gets this come from behind stoppage. In real time, I had no problem with the stoppage. Watching the replay, I understand why some people didn't like the stoppage, particularly when Parker, a couple seconds before getting stopped, did throw a half-hearted couple of punches with his legs not really underneath him. I want to remind people he also got nailed by a right hand after that kind of feeble attempt at a punch. He got stunned with a right hand and kind of paused for a few seconds on the ropes, and then Wardley launched another couple shots and made the ref wave it off. But you were there in the building. Did you, in the moment the fight was stopped, did you sense there was going to be any controversy surrounding it? And what do you
No,
think of it the day after?
immediately. Immediately. And I had a great vantage point because I was in the second row and I was opposite Joesph Parker, right? So I'm looking at his face. And I believe a few things came into play when the ref ultimately stopped this fight. And it's up to you to decide whether or not these things should be in calculation. But in I I feel like it was a makeup call, which is a terrible reason to stop a fight. And let me explain. In the round where Parker wisely got himself a little bit of breathing room by spitting the mouthpiece out, really got himself out of that round.
That's
In
right.
the corner, you can see Ben Davidson going crazy on the ref. The ref absolutely should not have stopped the action at that moment. You wait until there's a natural break in the action to replace the mouthpiece. That was crazy. He broke them up in the middle of a fucking exchange
Forgot that.
towards the end of the round. Maybe Parker doesn't get out of that round if the referee doesn't take that action. Uh, there is a another moment where the bell kind of saved Parker, arguably. Again, we don't know because the bell did ring, but that's not down to the referee. However, the referee is making these calculations. He's taking abuse from the corner. He probably reflecting in real time, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have stopped that action. That's just like hard rule. One of the few like actual rules in boxing. This is not at the referee's discretion. It is meant to be when there is a natural break in the action. Period. So by the time we get to the stoppage, don't forget, you know, Parker's reeling. Parker is certainly hurt. He got out of the round prior, or I think he got out of the round. When I say out of the round, like maybe saved by the bell on the round,
Yes.
not the round prior, but the round before. Then, in the moment, he takes the shot, blood busts out of his eye, right? It looks fucked. And he's reeling. And the exchange is happening, and he's not getting the best of it. And when Parker gets cracked, he steps back and assesses, but with his hands down.
Yep.
And he's doing this, right? Like, but he's making Wardley miss or at least taking something off the shots, but his hands are still down, and he looks as if maybe he's not protecting himself. However, when he comes back with shots, in the exchange, and this is the benefit of watching it on television, you can see that a lot of shots actually aren't landing.
Mm-hmm.
That there is a retaliation, that there is a show of ability to defend oneself coming from Parker in that final exchange. And on there were no shots that landed after the big punch from Wardley that made me think Parker was out on his feet other than the fact that his face with that eye gushing in the moment and the look on his face, which I could see from across the ring, 2 rows back, the referee's looking in your eyes with blood in his eyes, his hands down, and him kind of looking like this. I thought to myself before the fight stopped, like, that's a bad look. That is not what you want to be showing the referee. Now, a problem with what the referee again determined in the moment, which I think partially was a makeup call for the spitting out the mouthpiece. Like, all right, I'm not gonna let him get out of this. And also, at that time, you give the fighter some kind of indication
Yeah.
that he's in trouble because he wasn't in the kind of trouble where one more punch, puts him in a coma. He wasn't in that kind of trouble. He's not defenseless. And he's not knowing what the referee is thinking, and rightly so. He is trying to survive. I'm not saying he was in control of the action, but I don't think at that time he was thinking, oh, one more punch, or if I don't throw something right now, this fight's about to get stopped. Referee has to give you some kind of indication in that moment, some kind of like say something to let you know, hey, I need to see something, throw something, hands up, something. And then he just jumps in, which is kind of notorious for British referees. I don't know what that's about, but this is a thing that we know that happens here. And it really detracts from what might have ended up being a stoppage anyway, but we don't know. And also, it gives the referee so many different points where we can criticize him that I could just say it was poorly officiated. I'm not taking anything from Wardley's performance because he got the TKO. What does he have to do with any of this? But it isn't as definitive as it could be. And I do think in the recess of my mind that maybe Parker survives. He's ahead on the cards, maybe two more rounds. He wins one of the two, if not both. I don't know what happens when he gets back to the corner. It's a problem because it wasn't a definitive stoppage. And I don't buy into the whole save a fighter from himself and one too many punches is better than one too few. Uh, it wasn't that kind of situation. Not only that, but and here's what I think: a referee should be schooled enough about the fighters that he is officiating, especially at this level, to know that Parker's gotten up off the canvas before and finished fights with heavier punchers than Wardley. Like, you have to know who's fighting also. I think that comes into play when you're going to be jumping in and stopping a fight of this magnitude with these kind of consequences. Is this the kind of guy? Does he do that? What I'm looking at. That's not outside of the referee's purview to do research to know who he's officiating so he knows what he's seeing. I think if he knew Parker, understand what Wardley brought, and was better schooled in the moment, he would not have seen that as a moment where he needed to save Joesph Parker.
I've seen a lot of Joe Calzaghe, Oscar De La Hoya are two guys that come to mind who scored a number of stoppages the way Wardley got Parker out of there. A lot of combinations, a lot of it not landing. Enough of it's landing, enough of it's overwhelming the other guy as they're sitting on the ropes that they force the referee's hand a little bit to make a tough decision in real time. And Wardley was able to do that. And credit to him for doing that. Credit to Wardley for a lot of things in this fight. His chin, at the end of the night, he took a better shot than Parker and punched harder than Parker. And he was, and then had the conditioning, even though it looked like he was pretty spent by the time he got the things rolling in the 10th round. He looked pretty spent, and the fight was going Parker's way. But to his credit, man, he had enough conditioning in the 11th round to let go of 30 unanswered punches. Then Parker gets backed into another set of ropes, eventually returns some fire. But like you mentioned, he gets hit with the right hand. He pauses with his hands down, gets them up a little bit to parry the next three shots, but Wardley did everything he could to force the referee's hand a little bit there. Before I go in about the fight, I want to give a shout out to my man Sam Gordon from the San Francisco Chronicle. I just thought he had a great point after the fight. Shout out to my man Sam, and he goes, I got to keep it funky respectfully. One big caveat with this fight, and maybe I got to shut the fuck up, but we saw Parker get fried by Joe Joyce with other losses at the top level. Did we really need to see him against Usyk? This is the right result, even though Wardley probably can't mess with Usyk either. The truth came out. The Itauma fight was and remains a lot more compelling. And then this is the crux of why I got to share what my man Sam said. I thought he summed this up well. He said, if he was that guy, meaning Joe Parker, he would have won the fight. How about that? He would have separated at some point. And people will say, well, he was separated enough. He was up on the cards. And, I was saying, and I'm gonna get to the X's and O's of this fight a little bit. The ebbs and flows in this fight is what I enjoyed the most. And you tell me what you saw adjustments wise, but I'll sum it up here. Good battle of the jab from round one. Parker with the more traditional jab up by his chin. Wardley with that hit, that the jab from the hip, the up jab, and that was a good battle from the opening bell. Then the next battle, Raheem, was the battle of the pull right hand counter. And Parker ends the first round hurting Wardley with a right hand. Wardley gives it back to him. He hurts Parker in the second round, worse than Parker buzzed him at the end of the first. And I saw Parker kind of understand in that moment, all right, the right hand game against this guy is a little dangerous. I'm going to have to get a little bit closer and rely on that left hook a little bit more and throw it in combination, because Wardley, I think where he impressed me early in this fight was how he was twitchier than Joe Parker, who came in heavy for this fight at 262. We were talking about Wardley. Is he falling in love with just the right hand like Deontay Wilder? Raheem, I thought he showed a fair bit of extra wrinkles to his game. That right hand was kind of taken away from him for long stretches of the fight. And then he showed us, oh, I got a sneaky right uppercut. And he even cleaned up with his hook a few times. And even though he was getting clipped, his shoulder roll, and he kept dipping to the same side. And Parker made good adjustments about that. He started doubling and tripling up his jab and knowing this guy's going to keep dipping his head to the same side. He hurts him in the 9th round by knowing he's going to dip that. He jabs his way in to cut the distance. Then he triples up the hook. He buzzes Wardley. Wardley's looking tired. And it's looking like Parker's on his way to gaining control of the fight. But because Wardley, to his credit, kept it close enough, Parker he can't just go into prevent defense in 10, 11, and 12. It's still close enough that Parker's got to finish to make sure he wins this fight. And by the 10th round, I'm doing my live round by round, Raheem, and I'm saying Wardley isn't going to be able to find him off the lead with the right hand. So he needed to find a shot in between Parker's punches, and Parker was still taking enough chances that he could find that slip past the jab, boom, with the right uppercut, because Parker was a little too alert to find him off the lead, getting off first. Then in the 11th round, Wardley's almost letting Parker off the hook. He waits about a minute 15 before he really attacks, and I'm yelling during my live. I go, he's buzzed now. His reaction times are thrown off. Now you can hit him with the right hand off the lead. You don't have to wait on him to shoot something in between. And he nails him with the right hand. That begins to stop. But I just kind of wanted to take the audience through all those X's and O's. It was a great battle of jabs, then the battle of the pull right hand. Then Parker makes an adjustment with his left hook and getting a little bit closer, punching in more combinations against Wardley, who's looking to snipe more than he is throw combinations. Wardley hangs in there. Parker thinks he's fading, takes one chance too many, gets caught in between. I mean, hats off to both guys. Wardley pulled that out. What'd you think of the adjustments and everything?
Parker won the battle of the jabs.
Yep.
He won it early and he won it often. He won it by doubling it up and he won it by tripling. He won it with his own uppercut, in fact. These punches were impressive. And I thought at the time when I'm watching him execute those shots, like, that's class. That's where you're looking at levels. That's where you're looking at a guy with no amateur career. That's where you're looking at a guy against someone who has the kind of experience that Parker has. I thought that might be the difference in the fight late. I thought that moment when Parker's in trouble, he can get some distance and be superior with the jab, leave the right hand out of it, take the right hand away from Wardley, and put him on the end of that stick, hit him with the triple. Wardley was walking on to shots. Let me tell you, the defense from Wardley was far from impressive. He was walking in,
flipping enough to where he wasn't getting caught clean on the button, and it allowed him to hang in there.
I wouldn't even say he was slipping. I mean, he was moving his head, but oft times he was moving his head into shots. And when he would slip punches, I would say more Parker maybe was missing with the second or third punch of his combination than it was because Wardley was so elusive. Now, the pull right hand, that was a fantastic, fascinating thing to watch because you know Wardley's got the bigger right hand. You know that is textbook boxing. I can see Wardley understanding the mechanics of that and trying to get it off, but he doesn't really have the jab to set it up. And he is getting bettered or bested by Parker's jab in the exchange of that. So I enjoyed that pull right hand thing also. However, that wasn't the story of the fight for me. In fact, what was better than Parker besting Wardley in the jab competition was Wardley beating Parker with the body. That, to me, was the adjustment. Not even adjustment, that was the game plan. He started right from the opening bell with body work. He stayed with it. That's what got him the victory in the end. He was banking body shots. I think the reason that Parker wasn't as spry as he could have been by 10 and 11 was because those body shots were effective. And like I said, I was close enough to hear them land and close enough to hear coming from Parker. He was feeling those shots, and he got a few of them when he wasn't expecting it. Wasn't expecting Wardley to be savvy enough, and maybe that's down to Ben Davidson. Shout out to his corner. That's got to be part of the game plan. To know not only to do that, but to have the discipline to stick with that, and to believe that that was worthy and would pay off later, because we know that the big shot, right hand, head hunting, get this guy out of here, has got to be in Wardley's mind, because that has been his joker. That has been his ace card so far in big fights. So to rely, and he really did rely on that body work when nothing else was there for him, that's the story of the fight. That's the story that will be lost because this TKO came in an exchange, because of the blood, because it's on brand for Wardley to knock people out late. No one's going to be talking about that. But without that body work, I don't think we get to that TKO.
Well, the story for me, too, with Wardley is he's a little bit better than I thought he was, even though I noted his pull counter game, going into this fight. But again, the right uppercut, and then, again, he's not Floyd Mayweather by any stretch of the imagination, but he trusts himself with his lead hand low enough and hides behind his shoulder enough that he's getting hit on the top of the head. He didn't take it on the button, and that allowed him to hang in there long enough to let his power make the difference late in the fight. A lot of punchers wouldn't have the conditioning and the snap in their punches still late in the fight to deliver what he delivered, and a lot of punchers are front runners. A lot of guys wouldn't be able to get to deep waters and pull that out from the fire. So Wardley's a bit better, I think, than we thought.
This is a more flat-footed fight than I thought would be fought. Parker decided to be heavy because he wasn't going to move away from Wardley and be elusive. I think he decided to be heavy so he'd have more on his punches and be able to have more punch resistance. I don't think being heavy was a mistake. I believe that not being able to make an adjustment to take the body shot away from Wardley was a mistake. They just did it. They just absorbed it. And ultimately it paid off. If you take the body away from Wardley, he's way behind. Further, I don't think that one judge has it even. Like, he's winning rounds and keeping it close and keeping it interesting primarily by landing to the body. That's how he's keeping the distance. That's how he's finding other shots. That's how he's setting up his offense upstairs, because there were plenty of times when there was nothing there for him from Parker, that Parker wasn't giving him anything, and he went to the body. He found it hard, stinging shots. I can't overstate this element of the mind game, because Parker says, I'm going to smash him. Parker believes he has acumen that Wardley cannot counter simply because he doesn't have the experience or know-how. He goes in there believing he's the better boxer. He's heavy enough to take the shots, and he punches harder than what he thinks Wardley is going to be able to absorb if he is able to dominate this fight. The fact that Wardley was able to absorb these shots, and I think he got hit everywhere. Like, post-fight, when they say, oh, the guy got peppered, he looks like somebody shook pepper on his face, and it hit him here, and it hit him there, and it hit him here, and it hit him here, and it hit him here. There's no spot that this guy wasn't swollen and welts, because he got touched in every place on his body. That's what the triple jab does. Bing, bing, bing. That's how you pepper a guy. And there wasn't anything that Parker was able to do to frustrate Wardley to the point where he could show the levels. It never looked like a fight with a veteran, wily, experienced ex-champion and a novice. That's how Parker was meant to make this fight look. Parker was meant to show him that you don't belong here at this level. You are a blue-collar fighter or a white-collar fighter. I am a former champion on my way to an undisputed challenge. It never looked like that in the fight. I would say maybe the jab, like I said, was so educated from Parker. Yeah, that's levels. But then the body shots coming from Wardley, that's seasoned. That's a seasoned fighter that knows to do that. So that offsets. And in the end, it was Parker who made the mistake of not holding on or even taking a knee or at least putting his hands up and appearing to be in control of his defense so you can't get stopped like that. You're right. Overwhelming a guy with shots, whether they're landing or not, just looking like the guy can't do anything, and the referee is can't figure out what's landing and what's not. He just sees that the other guy's not fighting back, and one or two shots are getting in. Well, I gotta call this off before this guy gets hurt. That's a that's a seasoned way to deal with that situation, and it got the result, as you said. It has gotten on multiple occasions in the past, which is a stoppage that may be a bit premature, but that's gamesmanship. That's knowing what to do in that moment. That's more than Wardley is supposed to be able to do with the history and lack of experience that he has. And so, in fact, there are levels to this, and he's on a level he shouldn't be, but is.
Yeah, exactly. That's the story of the fight to me is look, he's supposed to be outboxing this supposed one-dimensional puncher. He's supposed to be a craftsman, a boxer against a puncher, right? And it turned out Wardley, I also think Wardley early in the fight was giving Parker some fits with his twitchiness. You're supposed to be the superior boxer, but he's actually a touch quicker and twitchier than you, and thus his punches, punch for punch, to my eyes, are a little sharper, a little snappier, and a little bit more explosive. So this one-dimensional puncher, turns out he's got a little bit more wrinkles and savvy to his game than you thought, and he's a touch quicker than you, so that complicated things a lot. And then, credit to Parker for even getting the double and triple jab going. That shows Parker's IQ, because if a guy buzzes you with a pull right hand in the first round, you're going to be awfully hesitant about throwing your jab. But Parker, being the savvy vet he was, still said, all right, no, I just got to throw it at the right distance, and I can't throw it one at a time, and I can't be lazy throwing it one at a time. He did. Wardley hung in there, found another adjustment, and that's the story of the fight to me. They need to have a rematch, by the way. I don't think Wardley against Usyk is a good fight. It's Usyk defending the title against a legitimate, deserving contender. Nothing wrong with that. But I think, look, there's such a debate about this stoppage and everything. Why not do it again? I don't think either guy has even Parker heading into this fight. Everybody agreed he was the bona fide number one contender. But you had a lot of people like myself, like Max, saying, yeah, he's the number one contender. There's no arguing that. But the sexiest fight in the division is Italma, which, by the way, Italma, I guess that's a no-go with him and Fabio Wardley, right? Because they're both with Ben Davison. So we could forget about Italma fighting Wardley, which sucks, because I think where we're at in the division is Italma Usyk is the fight. It's just Italma needs to do something to deserve it, to earn it, to make people believe what I just said, that he's deserved and earned a shot. I think the eye test shows he's the sexiest fight out there for Alexander Usyk, but he needs to fight. There's two alternate paths for me that Italma can go down right now. If him and his team's ambition is they believe they could be the anti-Mayweather Canelo, they can make a Mayweather Canelo type matchup with Usyk, but actually come out on top, then you got to fight a guy, not one of the guys on their way down. Not Dubois, not Joshua, not Parker. You got to fight a Cabiel. You got to fight a live dog in the top 10 with a pulse who has momentum, right? And Cabiel would fit the bill perfectly. Wardley would fit the bill perfectly, but they got the same trainer, so whatever. But so that's the route you go down. If you feel like we're never going to fight Usyk, we don't want to fight Usyk, the title is ours, we'll be patient about it, then you go fight the guys who are in the top 10 with big names who are on their way down. Dubois, Joshua, Parker. But anyways, that being said, they should just fight again. I don't think the only guy who passes the eye test that could really maybe beat Usyk hasn't proven himself at all against live bodies in the top 10. These two guys, they're both worthy veterans who have fought to the top of the division, but I'd rather them just fight again in a rematch. And have Usyk fight Cabiel.
Usyk? Usyk should vacate the title, allow for Wardley to be crowned champion. However, not unlike the Dubois layout, in this case, it would be a rematch. Have them two, Parker and Wardley, rematch for the true claim to the vacated title of Usyk. Let that fight happen that way. And then Usyk fight the winner of the rematch. It would be brilliant on Usyk's part because he, I don't think, believes, and this is speculation, but based on what he said about Moses Atama, why why does Wardley deserve a shot if Atama doesn't? I mean, let's not forget Wardley is is a phenom at this point, doing things he shouldn't be able to do, but he doesn't have the resume, the pedigree, the anything other than the position to get that fight. And I'm not super excited about it right now. If he beats Parker twice, that fight gets a lot sexier. If Parker comes back and beats Wardley, I mean, my God, he already deserves, he still deserves a shot at Usyk as far as I'm concerned, but he definitely puts his stamp on, all right, I'm that guy. I'm able to take that defeat, come back and beat this guy who got a TKO off of me. And then if Usyk faces the winner in that circumstance, he has an opportunity to become three-time heavyweight undisputed champion in the four belt era and four-time undisputed all-time so far. He can play the same game with them that he played with Dubois. And in the meantime, I don't think there is a necessity really for Usyk to take on a massive challenge. Now, to be fair, and you probably know because I don't know what mandatory is next up. Okay, if he vacates and it's the WBO, right?
It's
That
either the WBO or the IBF, I believe.
it's the WBO because if it was the IBF, I think I would remember. So it's the WBO that Wardley would be
He's the
crowned.
interim champion now. He just took that off of Parker.
Well, that's what I mean. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, so then in fact, if Usyk were to vacate that, that would be the crown for Wardley. Let the two of them rematch. Boom. What is the next up mandatory for Usyk? That's a big question, right? Usyk coming off a layoff, coming off of the string of fights he's had, can take his pick, let him stay, let him get back into the rhythm of things, take another box, take another fight. I don't mind a Cabriel fight for him. I mean,
No, Cabiel's body punching against him is interesting. It's interesting.
mhm.
So Lawrence Sakoli is the WBC number one contender, but Cabiel is the interim champion with the WBC. So it looks like Cabiel has next. Or a much, 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 much less sexier fight would be Kubrat Pulev. By the way, Fabio Wardley, he may be the unified interim champion. I don't know if we've had a unified interim champ. He has the WBA and I believe the WBO belt after beating Parker over the weekend. So the unified interim champ. Gee, it's almost
Yeah,
like
that's
there's a
good.
reason
That
why people
actually
aren't
ticks
that
two.
bummed that TKO is going to take over boxing or something.
That actually ticks two boxes for Usyk. He's clever. This motherfucker is clever. I would let Wardley have that and make Wardley fight one more fight, preferably against Joesph Parker, to get that undisputed shot. Let Usyk come back with a somewhat tune-up fight, get back into the game, busy fight after a nice layoff. Don't go in too heavy. Come in, fight Cabriel or even Lawrence Akoli. You know what I mean? If that satisfies the mandatory, and then after that fight, give us a summer fight with the Usyk and the winner of Wardley Parker 2. That would be fire. For
Cabiel's
me,
not a tune-up fight. Yeah,
well,
that's a tough fight.
he's not a tune-up, but I would not see him as the threat that even Wardley is right now. That is not down to his skills. It's just down to how he's been tested thus far and the caliber of his competition. I think he'd be in over his head. I think he'd be underwater. You know, he's welcome to prove me wrong. However, and I also think, maybe with the exception of the body work, Usyk figures him out and breaks him down
Yeah, I
with
agree with you,
a
but
lot of resistance.
just how much he spams body punches against Usyk, who's had some questionable moments in that. I'm not a low blow Daniel Dubois guy. Usyk schooled him in that first fight, knocked him out in the second fight, but that alone makes it interesting. And by the way, the heavyweight division's been good since the Klitschko's got old. Not the Klitschko's fault. Their era was terrible. A lot of old guys, a lot of little guys, a lot of fat guys, and a lot of ex-football players in the Klitschko era. They were great, no doubt about it. But really, man, ever since their reign ended, it's been a lot. The last 9 years have been a lot livelier heavyweight division. I'm
Yeah.
not ready to say like it's the '70s level of depth and greatness and '90s, but it's been a maybe an underrated last 9 years or so in the heavyweight division.